weeks.
The New York Post editorial board with this headline: enablers have been hiding the worst of Biden's senility from Americans. It may not be so hidden now, though. A post-debate poll finding more than half of voters now think Biden should drop out after the debate. That includes nearly a third of Democrats who think Biden should withdraw. David Avella, GOPAC chairman, and Doug Schoen, former Clinton advisor, both join me now. Doug, I have to start with this breaking news that the New York Times just came out with. The fact that Biden has allegedly told an ally that he's actually weighing whether to continue in the race is a huge development, because the Biden campaign, the Biden camp has maintained, no matter what hiccups that they've had in the past, that they are pushing through, and that there's no way that he could potentially weigh that sort of decision. What kind of pressure do you think the insiders are putting on Biden right now?
Huge pressure, Julie, huge pressure. And the fact of the matter is, despite what the Biden campaign says, if the Democratic establishment, the congressional leadership, the grassroots of the party say he can't handle a campaign, he's not up to the job, he's too old, and the leadership of the party, Presidents Obama and Clinton, the congressional leadership, say the same thing publicly or privately, Joe Biden will have no choice but to drop out. He cannot sustain a campaign if the party turns against him. And Julie, everything I'm seeing now is that is both happening and happening with great rapidity.
David.
There is one person who does not believe Joe Biden is in mental decline, and that's Joe Biden, which is not uncommon amongst those who are suffering from mental decline. The second person is Jill Biden. And for all of this talk of all these members of Congress and all these elected officials who want him to get out, it really is going to come down to what does Jill Biden and Joe Biden think. And as you look at some of the recent polling, and heck, we learned yesterday that RFK is going to be the Libertarian nominee in Colorado. If states like Colorado become in play, then all of a sudden resources get taken from the true swing states, and Biden starts getting underwater pretty fast.
Yeah. I mean, Jill Biden is really aiding and abetting elder abuse, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the fact that she's seen her husband struggle and has not stepped in, especially after this debate, it's an urgent matter. White House spokesman Andrew Bates just posted this, actually, on the New York Times report. We have to get this out here. He quotes that claim is absolutely false. If the New York Times had provided us with more than 7 minutes to comment, we would have told them so. That's very interesting. Doug, I mean, it doesn't seem to me that it would be so far-fetched for perhaps a private conversation to be held. Would it indicate necessarily that Biden's actually considering stepping aside? Maybe not, but I'm sure the conversation has been had. Somebody had to have had this conversation with Biden since that debate.
I would be startled, Julie, if the conversation did not happen.
Of course.
I'd be startled if there were not multiple conversations with Joe Biden and with the key staffers around him. Look, what David said about the swing states polling is now evident in what I've seen and most observers have seen. States that were in play, not in play, are now in play, and the 7 swing states all show comfortable leads. If that continues, it will be impossible, in my judgment, for Joe Biden to stay in the race politically. And if the cognitive issues appear as serious as they did it during the debate, I can tell you he will be out of the race within a couple of weeks.
Yeah. The list of things that Team Biden's, been blaming for the dismal debate is growing. His family pointed the finger at aides, accusing them of over-preparing him. His inner circle reportedly says the makeup provided by CNN made him look pale and pallid, while Trump looked tan. Well, he's since gotten a spray tan, so I guess they took care of that problem. But there's another report, a reported culprit, that no audience at the debate perhaps hurt him, and exhaustion after an international travel to France and Italy. Biden telling supporters yesterday, quote, "I decided to travel around the world a couple of times shortly before the debate. I didn't listen to my staff, and then I almost fell asleep on stage." Oh, my gosh. And, of course, that cold that we were told that he had on debate night is still an issue. Watch.
I would not see this as an episode. He had a cold. And that is the reality of the situation. That is the reality of what happened that night.
And finally, the media always getting a good target. Biden's campaign deputy campaign manager reportedly telling donors this week the media has spent a ton of time blowing this out of proportion. Did you see the awesome clips of our supporters on the tarmac doing the Cupid shuffle at 2 a.m. on debate night? Probably not, because the media is busy hyperventilating and trying to manifest drama. That's unfortunate that they can't just come out. I mean, even KJP has come out and said he had a bad night, okay? But it's not because of the cold. I know I have two men on camera here, but you know, the man flu, I'm sure one of you has gotten it at some point, is debilitating. So, but you can't even blame the man flu on this. This is a scary situation that certainly unfolded before the American public, but this is not the first time. The reason we don't see these news conferences, the reason we don't see him ad-libbing, the reason he's relying on a teleprompter is because this has been building for a very long time, David, and now the American public has been exposed to it.
You showed that 33% of Democrats think he should not run for re-election. And that becomes one of the most important voter blocks now in this race. Yeah. Do they vote for Robert Kennedy? Do they vote for Donald Trump? Do they stay home? And that is what the Biden campaign, and let's go back a second about why was Biden wait so long to get to Atlanta to do the debate? If he's tired, why do they make him travel on the day that he has to do the debate? So some criticism of the campaign and how it's being run is warranted. That said, voters are ultimately going to make their decision on is he up for the job? And that's what this summer now is going to be about.
Yeah, a lot of explaining to do by the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, had two key words to explain Biden's debate performance, and she said them over and over and over again. Watch.
It was a bad night. It is not uncommon for incumbents to have a bad night on their first debate. It was a bad night. It was a bad night. He had a cold and a bad night. It was a bad night. It was a bad night. It was a bad night. He had a bad night.
CNN's political director said that she didn't answer the key question voters have. Watch this.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have that?
There were a lot of questions asked by the White House press corps, and there was just none acceptance of that kind of a premise. It was just one bad night. We acknowledge that. But she's missing explaining to the country fundamentally why.
I mean, Doug, we were watching also a reporter just simply asking point blank questions. Does he have Alzheimer's? Does he have some sort of cognitive decline? An MRI could really actually find something if there was something. But the question is there something they're not telling us?
Well, they certainly haven't answered, Julie. And as far as I can tell, I've never seen, and I've been in politics close to 50 years, I've never seen a debate performance that bad, certainly not by an incumbent president. So this is unprecedented. I think my party will be benefited by an open nominating process, an open convention with transparency. I think that's where we're heading, and I think that's the only way my party can win this election, an election that is rapidly slipping away from us.
Doug Schoen, thank you very much. And David Avella, we appreciate you both coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.